What's up everyone, China Cycling here, and today we're here to look at the new Hyper 2023s. So this is going to be a super long video, so straight off the bat, let me tell you what's new. Basically, everything you loved about the old Hypers, but the internal width has gone up to 21 millimeters, external width 27, 28 millimeters. The shallowest rims have got shallower, the deepest rims have got deeper. They're lighter across the board, around 50 grams lighter on average. On the medium and the deeper wheels, the front and the rear wheel have different rim profiles. The front is a bit of a fatter, wider, shallower rim to deal with winds more, and the rear is more of a taller, like flat-sided aero as you can be rim. It really is like a what's what, a who's who of the Hypers. Everything that people were asking for from the old Hypers, they took all that and they made it into the new Hyper 2023s. So let's take a look. Now, straight off the bat, of course, you all know I actually work for Windspace. I've been working for Windspace for 3 years, just before the original Hypers came out. And I've been very involved with the development of these new Hypers. So this is going to be so biased because, you know, I was working on these. So everything I say, take with a grain of salt. I'll try to keep things factual. You know, 21 millimeters is 21 millimeters. It doesn't matter who tells you. So I'll try to keep things as factual as I can. As part of my job at Windspace doing the marketing, I've also sent off some of these to various reviewers on YouTube. So in the coming weeks and months, you'll see a lot more reviews popping up of them. But today, we're just going to go way in depth about everything you want to know about these wheels. And yeah, let's get started. So if you've been hiding under a rock for the past 2 or 3 years and you have no idea what the Hyper wheels are, basically in 2019, end of the year, these Windspace Hypers, the original ones came out and they had carbon spokes and ceramic bearings and yada, yada, yada. And they had, at the time, like $1,100–1,200 US. And so they ended up kind of making a bit of a storm on the internet because they were maybe one of the first reasonably priced carbon spoked wheels, and definitely the first to get it right. So main advantages of carbon spokes is obviously the spokes themselves. They are stiffer and lighter than a traditional steel spoke. I've done a few videos before on carbon spokes. Basically, if you put them in a jig and pull them, they won't snap until almost double the force that it takes to snap a steel spoke. Also, because carbon stretches less than steel, it means when you're really giving it the beans in a sprint or whatever, they feel a lot stiffer than a traditional steel spoked wheel. So back in the day, I made a video on the original Hypers, and that video did quite well, and lots of people bought them off the back of that. And then, as part of my job as doing marketing at Windspace, I also sent them off to Hambini. Now, at the time, Hambini had never done a video saying something good about something, as far as I know. So it was a bit of a risky move to send a pair to Hambini, but I loved the wheels, and you know, I thought he would too. And lo and behold, he did. In his wind tunnel testing, they did quite well, yada, yada, yada. Further down the road, sent a pair to Peak Torque. About 2 years ago, you can see the video he did on that. And his thing was testing the stiffness of the wheel. So he tested the 21 spoked rear wheel versus his own laced like 28 spoke wheel, steel spoked wheel. And the Hypers basically mopped the floor with his wheels. Like yeah, the stiffness of carbon spokes definitely isn't to be messed with. And so basically on the back of all of these reviews, Hyper kept getting glowing reviews and more people trying them. The word of mouth went, and pretty much they took over the whole of YouTube. Like, there seemed to be a point on YouTube in like 2020 and 2021 where almost every video had a pair of Hypers in it, or someone singing the praises of Hyper. So that was all cool. Obviously, working at Windspace and doing the marketing at Windspace, like, hey, that was great for me. It was good to see that growth. And also in terms of seeing everyone riding them out there, like hashtag Windspace on Instagram, like I'm checking that out every day. And now, there's tens of thousands of posts, people riding these wheels all over the world. There's now like 50,000 Hyper wheels in the world all over the place. They've been ridden by national champions. They won the race across America a few weeks ago. Yeah, so it's really cool to see something that in the beginning, when no one knew about it, I really believed in it, and then introduced it to people. And through YouTube, like literally more and more people have got their hands on these kick-ass wheels. And going off on a tangent, but yeah, that's why I love YouTube. Like, it's such a great platform for sharing information, and more people riding faster bikes is definitely what this channel is all about. But of course, in my opinion, there is no perfect product in the world. I don't care if you're talking about Apple products or Tesla products or anything. There is nothing perfect, especially with bike design. You know, everything's a trade-off. You know, you lose some torsional stiffness, you get some lateral stiffness, yada yada yada. You know, you want it to be more aero, you're probably going to gain a few grams. So there's no perfect product, everything's a trade-off. But as more and more people review the old hypers, you know, people are really starting to look hard for things to comment on. You know, you can't just say everything's amazing. So people were really starting to, you know, nitpick the wheels. And there were a few things that kept coming up over and over again. One thing for sure, people wanted a wider internal rim width. Now, me personally, I love 19mm internal rim width. But if I sit here and say, no, 19mm is the best, you're all wrong, then that's no better than the big brands. So we asked a bunch of our pros, we asked a bunch of our sponsored athletes, but most importantly, we asked a bunch of the owners of these 50,000 wheels what they wanted from the future hypers. And it was abundantly clear. Like, I think it was like 80-something% of people wanted a wider internal width. So yeah, that's where we are. Even though for me personally, I like 19mm internal rim width, people wanted 21mm internal rim width, so that's what we gave. You know, if we stand here all high and mighty and say, we're right, you're wrong, then we're no better than the big brands. So yeah, one of the mottos for Hyper 2023 is, you spoke, we listened, because really, like, we scoured every forum post, we scoured every YouTube comment, we rewatched all the YouTube reviews, and we took everything everyone was saying about the old wheels and put those into the new wheels. So yeah, these really are, like, to sound cliche, the people's wheels. So first off, let's talk about the names of the wheels. So back with the old hypers, the names are super straightforward. They were called the 38 mils, the 50 mils, and the 65 mils. But now, because the front and the rear wheel are different sizes, you can't call them the Hyper 46 on the front and 54 on the rears. It doesn't really roll off the tongue very well. So now the naming construction is like this. They either begin with an R or a D. R stands for rim brake, D stands for disc brake. Yes, you'll be having to know rim brakes are still here. And then there's three models. This is the 33, the 45, and the 67. And the two numbers stand for, the first number represents the front wheel, the second number represents the rear wheel. So the R33s that I have here, the front and the rear wheel are the same, so 3, 3 are the same. And then you have the 45s, so the R45 and a D45. The front wheel is 46 millimeters and the rear wheel is 54 millimeters. So the 4 stands for 46 millimeters and the 5 stands for 54 millimeters. And then on these, the R67s, the 6 stands for the 60 millimeters at the front and the 7 stands for the 68 millimeters, which is almost 70 millimeters at the back. Again, the naming conventions are a bit but I thought of them, so blame me if you don't like them. Spam me in the comments below. I'm sorry. In my defense, in the bike industry, there are lots of strange names. There's a brand that calls their wheel the 404, but they're 58 millimeters or something. So yeah, it's a unique name, so everyone knows what you're talking about, and they're easy to find when you go on Google or go wherever you go to buy your wheels. So obviously, these days, less and less brands offering rim brakes, but as long as I'm here, there's going to be rim brake wheels coming out of Windspace, goddammit. Yeah, I think horses for courses. You know, give people the choice. If people want to ride rim brake, ride rim brake. If you want to ride disc brake, ride disc brake. We'll continue to do both. Now, one thing of note with rim brakes, because the wheels have got wider, you're really starting to get to the limit of what the brake caliper can grab. On the SLC, it's not so bad because you've got the more standard kind of brake caliper, but on the T1500, because the brake caliper is underneath the chainstays, this kind of brake caliper, it starts to get really, really tight. Shimano officially claims that these brake calipers can take a 28 millimeter rim, but I've measured out of the box, like on a jig, perfect to Shimano specifications, there is no way you could put a 28 millimeter rim in there. So if you are running rim brake, make sure you measure how wide your brakes can go before you get one of these. Also with these, the 33s, the R33 and the R45, The rear wheel isn't so wide, it's like 27.6 millimeters, I think. But on these big boys, the fat boys, the R67s, the rear wheel is like 28.6 millimeters wide at the brake track. I mean, as you can see, I've got mine working here, no issues at all. I had to take out the washers from between the brake pads and the caliper, and I also had to sand down the brake pads a bit. So yeah. This is where we're at. Like, you've got the new 105 coming out with no rim brake version. The industry, unfortunately, doesn't want to keep supporting rim brakes. We're going to keep supporting them. We're also going to try to reach out to some of our friends in the industry to try to get some nicer rim brakes for bigger wheels and bigger tires. So we'll keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep fighting the fight. If you want to fight the fight with us, rim brakes are here for you to choose. So yeah, rim brakes available across the whole range, but just make sure you check that they're going to fit in your brake calipers. So yeah, in all of my testing, I own a lot of rim brake bikes. No issues with traditional rim brakes. Just like I say, the ones like this here, if you have under the chainstay brake calipers or any other strange brake calipers, you're going to want to measure first. All the data is on the Windspace website and the Lundwheels website, and you can just check on there to see if it's going to fit. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the design philosophy of these wheels. Basically, it was kind of like the awkward second album, you know. You've had the banging album, how do you follow it up? But luckily, the advantage was that there was so many people out there riding these things and so many great reviewers, you know. You had Hambini, you had Peak Torque, you had Raul Lucia. Is it Lucia? I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. You had Jasper. So many of these YouTubers who, you know, either they're great engineers or they're aerodynamicists or they're pro riders or they just really know their stuff. We also had Keith DeFiber. Keith DeFiber holds the world record for the most KOMs in the world. He's been riding the wheels for like 3 years. His feedback's been great. We had Bruce, aka the Cycle Doctor, former record holder for the most amount of kilometers in a month. He's got a few pairs of the Hypers too. He gave us plenty of feedback. Great testing from him. And then of course, like 50,000 pairs of these in customers' hands. And so the design philosophy of these wheels was just, you spoke, we listened. We took everyone's feedback and put them into the wheels, you know. We think we know a thing or two about wheels, but you guys also know a hell of a lot about wheels. So listening to your guys' feedback and taking it on board, that was the design philosophy of these Hyper 2023 wheels. So yeah, that leads me into like what's new with the new wheels. So yeah, number one, I just said, the internal rim width has gone from 19 millimeters up to now 21 millimeters. And the external rim width is 27 to 28 millimeters, depending on exactly which wheel it is. But yeah, full details are on the website. Now, what's the advantage of having a wider rim? The main advantage is that you can use wider tires. And back when the original Hypers came out, it was during the transition from 23 to 25 millimeter tires as being kind of like the norm. And so they were 19 millimeter internals and they played nice with 23 or 25 mil tires. But now with 21 millimeter internal width, they play nice with 25 to 28 millimeter tires. You know, these days, I think most road bike people are going on either 25 or 28 millimeter tires, some even 32 millimeter tires. Also no problem with the new Hypers. But yeah, the change from 23, 25 millimeters to 25, 28 millimeters is why they've gone from 19 millimeter internal to 21 millimeter internal. Especially if you're using a 25 or a 28 millimeter tire, the transition on the outside between the tire and the rim now is very, very clean. Before, if you put a 28 millimeter on the old Hypers, it would work, but it was a bit obvious that it was a bit bulbous on the tire. But now 25 or 28 on the Hypers work good. I've done loads of testing on these wheels. I've been riding these for like almost a year. I've got over 10,000 kilometers on these new Hypers. And one thing that I did in my lots of testing, I actually like having a 25 on the front and a 28 on the back if I'm going for comfort. Both my personal bikes actually use 25 front and rear because I don't really care about comfort. But yeah, if I'm on a comfortable setup like I had on my titanium gravel bike, I put a 25 on the front and a 28 on the back. And for me, that's a nice mix of comfort on the back with like sharpish feeling steering on the front, and also like it's probably a bit more aero too. So the second thing, what's new about the new Hypers, the rim heights, the rim shapes, all new across the board. Every single one, the old rim shapes gone, now are the new shapes. It's not a huge change from the old rim shapes. There's still lots of that DNA there because the laws of physics haven't changed since the old Hypers, so what was fast with the old Hypers is still fast with the new Hypers. But one thing that some people were saying on the old Hypers is that they weren't as good as other brands' wheels in crosswinds. And basically that just comes down to the shape of the front rim. And so now on the mid and the deep new Hyper 2023s, the front and the rear wheel have different rim profiles. So the front wheel now is a big, fat, rounder shape to handle the crosswinds, and the rear wheel is more of a traditional V-ish shape, or like it's a V blended into a U shape, which is just designed for outright speed. Now this whole system is called the F-Rapid system, which stands for like front and rear profiles are independently designed. I think it's the goofy name I ended up coming up with, but the rim profiles themselves definitely not goofy. The front wheel is designed to take a variety of wind conditions, and also is designed with the front of the wheel in mind, like where the clean air first hits the wheel. And then the rear wheel is designed just more for outright speed and also for better stiffness and power transfer. But the shape of the wheel, like I said, is a V that blends into a U, but it's optimized for this part of the wheel. Now, if you optimize for this part of the wheel, it's really hard to do because the bike's in the way, your feet are spinning around like a tumble dryer, and there's not many gains to be had there. But this is the last thing the air sees where it leaves the bike. So trying to have the air separate as cleanly as possible, there's a few watts to be gained there, I guess. So the rear wheel is optimized for the trailing edge performance, whereas the front wheel is optimized for the leading edge performance. Another thing that's new, so in all the comments, lots of people, you know, all the climbers out there, they were like, oh, the wheels are great, but 38 millimeters, can't you give me something a bit shallower? Like, you know, I don't care about aero, I just want lighter weight. And so now the shallowest wheel has gone from 38 down to a 35 millimeter rim. And that's this one behind me here, the R33 I have on this. So obviously my SLC is my climbing bike, so now I have the R33s on here. Again, they're lighter than the old wheels too, despite being wider. These are now our lightest ever wheel, like 1,229 grams for the pair. Tubeless ready, yada, yada, yada. But then on the other end of the spectrum, all of the TT boys and the guys who like to ride on the flats, they were like, 65's good, but we want deeper too. So now, yeah, on this, the R67, which I have on my T1500, the rear wheel is now 68 millimeters. So the front wheel is 60 mil, the rear wheel is 68 millimeters. So the deeper wheel got deeper, the shallower wheel got shallower. Another thing like that you learn when you sell 50,000 wheels, if there's like a 0.something% chance of something happening, when you sell 50,000, it happens quite a few times. So one thing that some users of the original Hyper were having was an issue that some spokes would twist over time. It was mostly something that affected the earlier Hypers. I think they got rid of the problem towards the end, or at least I've not seen it. But yeah, now there's no way it can happen with the new Hyper 2023s, because the head of the spoke has now changed to a T shape, which means it's impossible for it to twist around. And on the new 2023s, there's actually a nice little cover built into the end cap of the hub that covers all of the heads of the spokes up as well and makes sure they stay there. I know Peak Talk in one of his videos recently, he was talking about the risk of spokes coming unloaded from a hub, and yeah, this cover prevents that happening. This one here is actually a pre-production prototype, so this one doesn't have the cover, but my R67's over there, that's the production version, and that has the cover. Another change to the wheels, obviously everyone's always asking for lighter wheels, stiffer wheels, faster wheels. This is what everyone wants. Now lighter was a bit of a challenge for the guys because the Hypers were already pretty light, but then these days, you know, some other brands have been playing catch up and they've been getting lighter, so it was time for us to chop off some weight as well. Now most of the weight has been chopped off from the rims, and as a result, on average, the new wheel sets are more than 50 grams lighter than the wheel sets that they replace. Especially these guys, the big boys, the R67s, I think like 90 grams lighter than the old 65 mils. On the shallow wheels, obviously because the rim's smaller, there's less weight to be saved, but even so, I think this is like, you know, 20 or 30 grams lighter than the old wheels, which is better than a kick in the teeth. For the hubs, there wasn't much to be changed or much weight reduction. In our opinion, it's much better to have a more reliable hub with a few extra grams in it than to have something that's not so reliable and the bearing seat can get pulled around by spokes and you have loose bearings and your bearings die super quick. So yeah. Also on a wheel, weight on the hub is less of a penalty than weight on the rim because of the moment of inertia is a lot lower on the hub because obviously it doesn't have to spin around so much, it just stays near the center of rotation. So yeah, in our opinion, hubs are not an area where you want to go crazy light. because you're going to affect your reliability. So hubs, no major changes from the old hypers. We learned a lot of lessons selling 50,000 of them. I think everyone knows, like way back in the day in 2019, the first few batches, like there were some hypers that were creaking because not enough grease in the free hub body. These are all lots of lessons that we learned throughout the hypers. So we didn't want to throw away all that knowledge. So the internals of the hubs are mostly unchanged from the old hypers. So one thing we did about a year and a half ago is we built up a whole bunch of prototype wheels with different spoke angles, different number of spokes, different spoke tensions. And we had a whole bunch of people do a bunch of blind testing. So we called all the wheels like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, had people ride up and down hills, do sprints in them, yada, 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 and then fill out a form and say what they thought of the wheels. Now, some of these findings are super obvious, but some of them were also counterintuitive. For example, spoke tension, especially the pros, like the lower spoke tension wheels, they said felt accelerated better, which is a bit counterintuitive to what you think, right? But yeah, so there was all this testing and feedback from the guys. And as a result of that, we tweaked a few things. And the main thing that got tweaked was the drive spoke angle on the rear wheel. So before, the drive spoke angle of the rear wheel wasn't that great, which gave the wheel a huge amount of lateral stiffness, but the torsional stiffness, like, it wasn't bad because they're carbon spokes and they're well built and well designed with big flanges. But it was one thing that the pros, especially, they felt more angle gave them an even better like acceleration feel. Anyone who's ridden the old hypers will know, as soon as you get out the saddle, as soon as you put the power in, they just go. And now with the increased spoke angle, like that has been turned up to 11. If you thought the old ones accelerated fast, like these ones are just boom, on steroids.
Well, rejection, hearsay.
Wait, you asked the question.
Oh.
I think that's about all of it for changes. Like there are a few other small changes, like when they redid the rims, they also made it slightly easier to seat some tubeless tires. The rim is still hooked. Again, we still think hooked is the way to go for road wheels at the moment. Hookless, there are some gains to be had in terms of weight and in terms of the transition between the tire and the rim. But in our opinion, it's not worth the risk of your tire flying off your rim at 70 k's an hour or whatever. Okay, so this is turning into a super long video, but like I say, I think so far it's all been pretty factual. I'm not going to go on about how they feel to ride or this, that, and the other, because of course I'm biased. I'm going to tell you they feel amazing. We'll have to wait until they get in other people's hands to get that verdict. But you can imagine how they feel, because there's not much change from the old hypers. Like I say, the drive spoke angle has got a bit more aggressive, so now they pick off the line even more. And yeah, they've got like 50 grams lighter, so of course they're gonna climb better and accelerate better and all of this stuff. But I'll leave the opinion to other non-biased people. One other fact, there has been a price increase of $100 US. Again, these days, what isn't going up in price? But yeah, because the production costs have gone up a bit, because the new spoke heads are a bit more complicated to produce, and because you've got new different molds for the front wheel and the rear wheel now, so all the costs crept up a bit. So unfortunately there is a $100 increase in price, but at $1,300 US with free shipping, I think it's hard to find a wheel set from a brand that has the same reputation as Windspace, that has sold as many wheels as Windspace. The wheels are UCI approved. UCI approval seems to be turning into a bit of a joke these days. Some of our rivals on their website, they still say they're UCI approved, but if you go over to the UCI website, they haven't updated it since 2016. And if you think the wheels they sold in 2016 are anything like the wheels they sell today, then yeah, you're in for another story. But no, all of these wheels, you go on the UCI website, you'll see them listed: R33, R34, R33, R45, R67, D33, D45, and D67. They've all been UCI approved before they even went on sale. Which one do I think you should get? I guess that's a question we can go for. So with the old wheels, obviously you had 38, 50, and 65. The 38 and 50 were always really close to each other, and the difference in weight was almost perfectly matched by the difference in aero, so it was always like much of a muchness. But now, because the difference between the R33s and the R45s is a bit bigger, maybe it becomes more of a decision, yeah. So the R33s are definitely more focused towards climbing now. The front and the rear wheel are the same. They're just for climbing. Obviously, the shape of the rim is still an aero rim, but it's not going to be able to compete with a taller rim. On the other hand, the R45s or the D45s are a much more aero rim. You know, you've got 46 mil at the front in a nice sort of fat U shape, and on the back, you've got a 54 millimeter, just a totally reduced drag. Another thing to add a conundrum, maybe before if you were scared of crosswinds, you could go for the smaller wheels, but now because crosswinds aren't as much of an issue as before, that's changed things. So yeah, I think it's a bit more complicated about which one to choose these days. And then the old ones, the 65 millimeters, because they were so heavy, they were like 1,500 and 1,600 grams. Unless you were really riding around on the flats, they were never really worth it. But the R67s and the D67s are almost 100 grams lighter than the wheels they replace. So now the difference in weight between those and the R45s and the D45s has gone down as well. So this is also a bit more complicated. I mean, I'm super fortunate. I have access to any of the wheels, and even I find it hard to choose which ones to go. So if you're pulling your hard-earned cash out of your pocket, I can appreciate that it is hard to choose which one to go for. I think for most people, the middle of the road, the R45 and the D45 is probably your best bet. They're light enough that they're going to be fine on the steepest of climbs. The front wheel is a bit shallower and super fat, so you're going to be fine in any sort of crosswind. But you know, they're still, 46 mil and 54 mil aero rims are still going to be fast on the flat. So I think for most people or a lot of people, the middle of the road, the R45, the D45 is going to be your best option. Now me, I'm a guy who likes min-maxing. Whenever I play a video game, it's either slider all the way up or all the way down. So for me, I'm all about either the super climbing 33s or the super deep boy 67s. Obviously, you know what kind of riding you do best. Choose the one that best suits your style. Maybe when more reviewers start reviewing different ones, they'll also be able to give you their opinion. But in my opinion, I think most people, the middle of the road ones, the 45s are the way to go. But if you do love climbing and you're all about steep climbs, the 33s might be your thing. On the other hand, if you like ripping up the flats and you don't do that much climbing, then sure, go for the 67s. So yeah, this video has been a bit of an unguided rant, a ramble. I have no script for this video, as you can tell. But because I've been working on these wheels for the past 2 years, especially the past few months, getting all the marketing stuff ready, doing all the brochures, doing the website, yada, yada, yada. Like, I've got it in here, a lot of knowledge about these wheels. I think it's safe to say I also have the most mileage on these new wheels of anyone else in the world. So yeah, I have a lot of opinion and a lot to say about these wheels. So sorry this video has been a bit of a ramble. It's also the 30th of June today. These wheels go on sale in about 13, 14 hours. So I've got to get this video edited as quickly as I can, throw it in the YouTube oven, and get it done to you guys. By the time you watch this video, if I've timed it right, the wheels should be just about to go on sale. There aren't that many wheels in the first batch. Like I say, the guys are ramping up production as quickly as they can, but they don't want to, but we don't skip on quality here. We make sure they're done and they're perfect before they get sent out. So the first few batches are smaller batches. Later on, the productions will be getting bigger and bigger. But if you are after a set, of course, head over to winspace.cc or lunwheels.cc. As always, discount code ChinaCycling10 gets you 10% off. They will be rolling out to dealers around the world too. These days, Winspace has been growing its dealer network. I think all around the world now, there's a couple of hundred dealers, especially in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, a whole bunch of dealers. They're starting to get more in the likes of Europe and America. Shout out to GC Performance, he stocks the wheels. Over on the West Coast, there's a few stores starting to stock these too. If you're in the UK, there's also a bunch of dealers, Jedi Cycle Sport, Al's Bike Shed. These are the guys I can think of off the top of my head. There's more and more dealers selling them. You'll be able to pick them up in dealers soon. I think I've kept this review as unbiased as it can be for a guy who's been working on the wheels for the past 2 years. I've hopefully kept it factual. Hopefully you learned something. If after this huge video you still have questions, then let me know in the comments down below. It's been a bit of a mad crunch getting all this stuff ready for the launch, but the launch is tomorrow. I'm going to have a vacation. I'm going to get a haircut. And I hope you guys get your hands on a pair of these wheels. and I hope you enjoy them. Super thankful for all of your support. I know I don't give much love to this channel these days, and my day job keeps me very, 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 very busy, but I love my job, I love these wheels, and I love you guys too. So I will see you next time. China Cycling out. Oh, I just forgot a thing. I remember in my original Hyper review, I did a thing where at the end of the video, I spun the wheel and it just kept spinning for a really long time. Let's see how the new Hyper goes. Let's keep the tradition alive. Go. Not sure if the brake's rubbing. I don't think so. We'll see how long it goes. By the way, if you like WindSpace stuff, join our Discord server. I'm often in there, chatting away, so come say hi. Still going. How many minutes wrong? I don't know. 3 minutes? There's a freaking mosquito. I have just realized, however, that the tire is flat. I've been running it without sealant. Oops. Anyway, I think it's going to keep rocking back and forth for a while, so peace.